Have you ever wondered why you keep repeating the same old patterns over and over again, even when you know that they're not serving you anymore? Saying yes when you really want to say no is an example. Overthinking every conversation you have and feeling worried or nervous that you said something inappropriate. Maybe you're trying to get everything right, do it perfectly, cross all the T's and dot the I's. Perhaps you're feeling responsible for everybody's emotions and you're trying to manage everyone just so that you can feel safe. Maybe you're pushing yourself when you're exhausted and you have nothing left in the tank, but you push anyway. Perhaps you're trying to control outcomes so that you can finally feel safe. And what if the patterns were never proof that anything was wrong with you, but they were actually intelligent adaptations that your nervous system created or developed in order to help you survive, to help you feel like you belong, to help you feel safe? Hey, and welcome to Masks Off, Inner Freedom for People Pleasers and Perfectionists. This is a podcast for those who are tired of holding it all together. I'm Kim Gross, your host, and if you've ever felt like you're doing all the right things, but still feel anxious, disconnected, or quietly burned out, you're in the right place. Here we talk about the patterns you don't even realize you're living inside of: self-abandonment, overfunctioning, chasing approval, and mistaking productivity for your worth, and more. This isn't about fixing yourself. It's about remembering who you were before you learned to perform, perfect, and please to belong. Each week, we'll slow things down. We'll unpack the nervous system, the inner critic, and the subtle ways that you learned to disconnect from your true self so you can stop living from pressure and start living from presence. This is your space to take the masks off. So let's begin. So to briefly recap the month of May, the inner child month, we've been looking at the younger parts of ourselves that learned how to perform, to please, to perfect, and to control, and ultimately disconnect in order to feel safe. In the first week, we talked about how perfectionism is not a personality trait. Let me say that again. Perfectionism is not a personality trait, but it is a form of protection. Then in the second week, we talked about approval scripts. We talked about these unconscious rules that we just learn to adapt in order to feel like we're loved and accepted. And then last week, we talked about reparenting, becoming the safe, the loving, grounded adult that your younger self needed and still needs today. This week, the final episode for the Inner Child Month and the 6-year anniversary month of Masks Off, we are bringing in a beautiful and powerful lens and that is the nervous system. Today, my guest, Lori Montry, a somatic practitioner and creator of the Freedom Framework. Lori's work begins with a simple but powerful premise that you are not the problem. You are not the problem. And the patterns that you struggle with are intelligent adaptations shaped by stress, overwhelm, and experience. She is also the author of You Are Not the Problem, and she helps people understand themselves through a nervous system lens, which I'm so excited to talk about today because, as we were just saying before we hit record, that the nervous system work has been the most pivotal in my own healing. This conversation today is for the person, the woman who has been trying to heal herself by pushing harder, doing more, figuring out, fixing herself, shaming herself into change. And my hope is that today you begin to see that you don't need more pressure. You don't need more fixing. And just maybe you need more safety, more compassion, more grace, more gentleness. And maybe you don't need to fight yourself anymore. Maybe you just finally need to understand. I'm so excited for this. I have full body chills. Like I have goosebumps all over. So welcome to the show. I'm sure this is going to be an amazing conversation. And I am really excited to have you here today to help us close out the Inner Child Month. And before we dive into your freedom framework, I was just wondering if you could share with the audience a little bit about your story and what led you to doing the work you do around the nervous system as well as doing somatic work.
Absolutely. And Kim, thank you so much for creating this space. First of all, for all of us, is such a wonderful place. And congratulations on 6 incredible years. That is quite an achievement and really points to your commitment to bringing us this kind of information.
Thank
And
you.
I love how you framed our setup here. And if people, if they only hear one thing from us today, I hope it is that I'm not a problem to be fixed. And that was really, I think that just opening up to that possibility was the cracked door for me out of the life that I had created that was based on, all of the adaptations that we've been talking about and into a life of authenticity and joy and safety. It didn't start out that way, though. I was the short version was there were a lot of challenges for me as a little one. I was brought into a family that already had 5 children in it already. I'm the sixth of 7, and my mom was doing best she could, but very overwhelmed, very stretched nervous system. And I knew that. I felt that. I was a burden. I was another mouth to feed, another butt to wipe, and there was no energy or capacity for me. And then, as a victim of sexual abuse around age 4, things got a lot harder for me, and I didn't have anywhere to turn. And so I did what we all do. And we do this whether our circumstances are what someone would consider traumatic, or if they're just kind of the normal everyday types of things where the kind of care that's available wasn't necessarily the kind of care that we needed. So I don't want anyone listening thinking, oh, well, I didn't have that kind of background, so what's my excuse? We all adapt, and we adapt just like I did in terms of our thoughts, right? We adapt mentally. So I developed the thought pattern that helped me make sense of my world and helped me find as much safety as I could. And those thought patterns were things like, I must be broken. There must be something wrong with me that
Mm,
people would, treat me the way that they are. So, and that was really kind of empowering because then the ball was in my court and I could fix myself. And when I fixed myself, then everything would be so great, right? So that was my framework mentally. I also developed patterns of the nervous system, right? It was
mm,
hypervigilant. I was always watching for who do you need me to be? What's going on in your body? What's going on for you so that I can show up in the way that I need to in order to please you and take care of you in the hopes that you will then in turn take care of me. So there were all of my nervous system patterns, and then, of course, my behavioral pattern.
mm,
And a big part of that for me was walling off, shutting down,
mm.
and emotional eating. It was my friend. It was my go-to. It was the place that where I didn't have to ask. It was just there. And so these adaptations and many more, which I write about extensively in the book, created my life. And not just in my childhood, they came with me as I grew. And that need for perfection, it led me towards it kept all of my body issues just really in the forefront as I worked so hard to perfect a body that was just fine the way it was. But I just because I wasn't feeling good enough yet, I kept thinking it must be those, 2.5 pounds or the, whatever. I didn't have a big enough thigh gap or whatever it was in the moment that my brain would tell me. I was a super high achiever. I graduated cum laude from the Harvard Law School. I did what I needed to do to look really good on paper. And in my late 30s, thought, oh, wait a minute. I achieved all these things. So where's that peace? Where's that inner, that inner sense of, yeah, I'm good. Okay, I can just be here and be present in my life. And aren't things so lovely? And they weren't. I was still battling myself every day. I was in a relationship that was soul crushing and very little was working in my life. And that's when I decided to become a student again and figure out if my peace is not here in all of these things that I have worked so hard to achieve. Where is it? And that's when I became a somatic practitioner and studying from all kinds of modalities in every aspect that I could get my hands on to understand what was going on for me. And then once I did, I thought, well, I can't keep this a secret.
Mm.
This is too good. I switched careers, I switched lives really. And that's what led to the work that I've been doing for about 15 years.
Well, I feel like we're already connected in that way. But one thing that you said that is really important, and I want to circle back and highlight it for the listener. And I have been saying it throughout the month, but I think it's important to just keep honing in on it is that the way that you showed up or the way that I showed up, they are not our personality, right? That was the week one. Like perfectionism is not your personality. And
Right.
I think sometimes it becomes confusing or tricky because we have been this way for so long, right? Like
Yeah.
I was school age when this started. So
Yeah.
for as long as I can remember, these were the ways that I showed up to adapt, as you said.
Yeah.
Probably started when you were 4. I probably started when I was 4 as well, but just
We probably started when we
even
were
more
in
in the
utero.
womb.
Yeah,
In the womb,
for
like, in
sure.
the
For
womb. I
sure.
really believe it. And because it feels so familiar and it's how we always were, that we can think it's who we are and it's a part of us, which is why it makes sense that the brain then goes to this place of, well, it must be me, I'm broken. And
Yeah.
not only that, but because of what you shared in your story, that even though your mom did the best that she could, as did my parents, they showed up in the best way that they could,
Hmm.
but it was not what I needed at the
Yeah.
time. And I couldn't, as Gabor Amante says all the time, I couldn't in my mind or you in your mind go to the place that it must be the parents because then what? That's
Terrifying.
scary. Our survival
Yeah.
now is at stake. We couldn't, in our little 4-year old mind, say, well, it's mommy's fault, daddy's fault. What does that mean? So it
Yep.
must be my fault.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So,
Mm-hmm.
right from that very early entry point, we're already making ourselves a problem. And then
Indeed. Wow.
how, you use the word soul crushing, but soul crushing that many of us, most of us, go an entire lifetime
Yeah.
believing that they were a problem. So
Mm-hmm.
I love that we're shining a light on this and
Mm-hmm.
cracking this open. It's not new. People talk about this all the time, but I think it's important to say it as often as possible and in as many ways as possible, because like you wrote a book that you're not the problem, and you said if the listener walks away with one thing from this episode, which is just that recognition of, okay, maybe I'm not the problem here,
Yeah.
and what
Yeah.
that could lead to. Do you want to say any more about that?
What you're identifying, this is just, we're so normalized to our story, and we've found safety here. So there's a promise there, even though we have all this data. For me, for almost 4 decades, I have data. This isn't working, and yet I cling to it.
Mm,
Why would I cling to something that has clearly never produced anything that I could really hang my hat on, right? Because if there was a moment where I felt enough, perfect enough. How long did that last?
mm,
45 seconds,
mm.
maybe until, then I was totally wrong again. So why do we cling to something like that?
Yeah,
That is
why
so
do we?
clearly,
Do you
yeah,
have thoughts on why we do?
yeah, there's nothing else,
Mm,
right? And it holds a promise. It holds the promise of safety, right? And when there is no other avenue, then we're gonna go for the promise,
yeah.
right? It's kind of like if we've been a week without food and we come across a candy bar, a half-eaten, melted, and then recongealed candy bar on the sidewalk, hell yeah, we're gonna eat it
Mm,
because it's better than nothing, right? So think about
yeah.
the terror of, there is no way for me to find safety. We couldn't, as humans, we couldn't even survive in a moment like that. There has to be something
Yep.
that we can at least try to find safety, right? I often think of it as a kind of like our old beliefs are a blanket, right? And this blanket is scratchy, it's
Mm,
misshapen, there's holes in it. And so when we try to cover our feet, our butts stick out, and we're just, we're wrestling with this scratchy old blanket. But if we're freezing cold, we're
yeah.
going to use that blanket. Our new beliefs are this beautiful, warm, soft, oversized blanket that you just want to, smells good. Like everything about it is so fantastic. But in order to knit this new blanket, you have to let the other one go. And in that interim, when you don't have the old blanket because you've said no more, but you're knitting the new one still, it's freezing cold. And it
Mm,
is a hard, hard thing to do, especially if you don't have the tools and the resources to know how to knit, right? And so that's where we find ourselves a lot when, in that recognition, like, okay, I see this isn't working, but there's nothing else there. There's no neural pathways. They never got
right.
help.
Right, exactly. And I don't think that if we're freezing cold, we're going to let go of the old worn out
Mm-mm.
blanket without something in its place. So, what I talk about a lot in my episodes is, and it's because I can just claim it for myself, I call it our inner controller, right? So,
Mhm.
the
Mhm.
inner controller is this part of us that is developed in order to protect and keep us safe. But it's not doing the best job because it's
Yeah.
keeping us stuck in those people pleasing, perfectionistic, over controlling type of patterns.
Mhm.
And going back to what you were saying, that it's better to have something to hold on to, right?
Mhm.
Because in the face of uncertainty, which most of us struggle with the fear of uncertainty. And whenever we're in fear, we're in lack, we're in scarcity, what does the mind want to do? It wants to control, thus our inner controller. So for people like you and myself and anyone who identifies with this podcast,
Yeah.
will say, well, and it's all subconscious, of course, it's
Mhm.
maybe not in the conscious mind. but I know how to perfect myself.
Yeah.
I know how to make myself look good. I know how to control my weight. I know how to control what I eat. I know how to control my exercise. I know how to control by getting good grades. I know I can do these things. And if
Mhm.
I do these things, it's going to give me something,
Yeah.
external validation, a sense of worthiness, not
Mhm.
true worthiness,
Mhm.
but a sense of it. It's something that the mind can hold on to. It's something
Yeah.
that the inner controller is doing to protect the wounded inner child who was never allowed to be her true self and didn't have the safety. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Absolutely. You're naming the big issue with respect to our mind, right? And
Mm,
I would also say it goes a layer deeper, and that is our nervous system is playing out those patterns as well. It is scanning constantly, taking in information and holding on to old patterns that we have learned that go alongside of our mind, right? And
yeah.
those two things are happening simultaneously and they're feeding off each other. So the mind is feeding the nervous system messages, oh my gosh, we're not safe. And the nervous system is feeding the mind messages, oh, my heart is racing. Oh, I have a pit in my stomach. Oh, whatever the body sensations
Mm,
are. And so those two are working together. They're like, yeah, this is really bad, huh? Yeah, we better, and they're just going back and forth.
yeah.
And it really drives those patterns in. And then when we start to work on them, if we don't work at both levels, mind and body, then we're not going to make the progress that we want. And unfortunately, we're going to be like, oh, wait a minute, I'm doing the work. Why is nothing changing for me?
Mm,
And that's where I see a lot of people getting stuck. And it's so sad and frustrating because here they are trying so hard.
yeah.
And then when it doesn't resolve because they're missing a piece, that becomes more evidence. See, I told you we really are broken. Look, we've been doing all this work and nothing is changing.
Yeah. So I would love to share a story if I could, or an example that
Yes.
plays right into what you just said. And I wrote about this in my book as well. Before we keep going, I want to take a moment to share something really close to my heart. If you're listening to this podcast and you're thinking, wow, this feels familiar, the people pleasing, the perfectionism, the constant self pressure, I wrote a book just for you. It's called Free to Be, A Pathway to Inner Liberation, and it's part memoir, part healing guide. I share my own journey of learning how to stop living in victimhood, take off the masks, and come home to myself, but not by fixing myself, by understanding my patterns with compassion. This isn't a book full of fluff or quick fixes. It's honest, it's grounding, and it's for anyone who's ready to live with more peace and freedom. You can find Free to Be on Amazon. And if the book resonates with you, I would be so grateful if you would take a moment to leave a review. Even a few words can really help others to find it. When I was 5 years old, I was playing with my cousins and we were playing house and we had
Mhm.
just made dinner. And dinner was a plate full of some leaves, some grass,
Yeah.
and some particular kind of pine needle that was kind of like flat. I don't know exactly what kind of pine tree it was, but it was a pine needle. So I took a piece of it and I went to pretend to eat my dinner. And again,
Mhm.
I'm like five, maybe six at the most. And you know how sometimes when you go to eat something, if you breathe at the same time, you end up choking?
Yeah.
So I
Yeah,
guess it was
absolutely.
like, right, it could be your spit or something, or even if we were like, you're breathing and trying to swallow at the same time. So I brought it to
Mhm.
my mouth and I must have like took a deep breath and I ended up swallowing this piece of pine needle. And it was like stuck in my throat. And I
Oh,
was somehow got into the house and I was like throwing up blood. I was, choking and it seemed like it went on forever. I just remember the adults being frantic. Everyone was a wreck, right? No one was really calm except for one aunt who was a nurse, and she was like, get some bread, get some milk or something. They were just trying to get it to go down. It wouldn't go down. I kept throwing up blood, and I literally thought that I was going to die. That was
Oh,
this
yeah.
was the feeling that I had.
Yeah.
And then finally, like my dad just kind of picked me up and started to rush me out the door to take me to the hospital. And then finally, like it came up. I don't mean to be
Mhm.
so descriptive and gross, but the point is that situation, along with the fact that not one adult
Mhm.
came to me after the fact and said to me, "Oh my God, Kim, are you okay? That must have been so scary for you. Let me just hold you. Let me hug you." Anything, nothing. They just went on and continued on with the party.
Yeah.
And it was like just going on like it never even happened.
Wow. Yeah.
Right. So I was never, so my nervous system then got locked into place around health issues, health crisis. And it was like
Mm.
every time forward, something happened to me or someone that I loved. And the reactions from the adults were the same. So they probably had their own trauma. My mom and dad had their own trauma around health crises and things like that.
Mhm.
So moving forward, anytime throughout my life, I would go into panic.
Yeah.
And so the thoughts would be, oh my God, something really bad is happening. My nervous system remembered that experience
Yeah.
from the age of
Yeah.
5. And like you said, round and round it goes to today, where I just shared with you that I'm having a health issue going on where I've had postmenopausal bleeding and post biopsy bleeding. And it's like, okay, now this is the pivotal moment to
Mhm.
do something different. Instead
Yeah.
of letting the same pattern play out of, oh my God, something's wrong, trigger my nervous system, the thoughts will
Yeah.
come, oh my God, I'm bleeding too much, something is wrong. And then now it's like, I go to the place of putting my hand on my heart. And I go to the place of telling my inner child, it's okay.
Yeah.
You're okay. And I have to do it over and over and over and over again because
Mhm.
there are years and layers of my nervous system being locked into place around health issues. So
Yeah.
when you were making the comment that some people might try to do something different and it doesn't work, and then they say, see, I knew I was broken. I wanted to bring the story in to just kind of back up what you were saying, but also to say, it's not that there's something wrong with me for
Yeah.
reacting that way. This is a pattern that's been deeply ingrained and just kept that neural pathway just kept getting more and more grooves
Mhm.
because
Mhm.
every time something happened in my life or someone that I loved and cared about, I went to the place of something, oh my God, they're going to die. I'm going to die. Something is wrong. Boom, nervous system freezes.
Yeah, such a great example. It's really nice when we have real life to kind of say, we talk about these things in a little bit more of a theoretical
Yes.
aspect, but to have like this is how it plays out. And that was something in the book. That was so important to me to bring these stories in.
Yep.
In your story, of course, right? Um, Having something wrong with me, it can't be handled. It's not safe. It's an absolute catastrophe. And that feeling you said, I feel like I'm going to die. So whatever the challenge is, I need a root canal. Oh my gosh, I might die, right? That's what your
Yes.
nervous system is
Yes.
saying. And your brain, and especially when we are grown up and we think to ourselves, well, that's silly to go there. And we just say, so we basically tell the part of us, right? The 5-year old
Yes.
of you who went through that horrific traumatic experience. When we're an adult and we say, well, that's dumb, I shouldn't think that. Basically, we're telling that little one, you're dumb. You don't
Yeah.
matter, right? You shouldn't feel that way. And then here we go, right? That is not a cue of safety, right?
It's
So the
not a
nervous
cue of
system
safety
believes
at
that,
all.
yeah, heighten, 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 heighten. But and it also goes back to what we said before. There is no other avenue. When there is a health challenge, there's no other avenue, but you're building one right now.
Mm.
And that avenue is And this is one where we can't say it's okay, there's nothing wrong. We can't say that
Yeah.
because there could be.
There could
And
be.
we need to, but what we can do is we can show up and say, you're not alone. I'm
Yes.
here now. And whatever it is, I'm going to get you the best care. I'm going to stand with you the whole time. I'm going to give you what you need. I'm going to bring in the right resources because we can do those things now that weren't available then. And I love how you're saying you're not only reassuring with your mind, with your voice, you're also bringing in
Mm.
your body and you're asking, where did I feel that fear? And what was that like? And actually bringing it up so you can tend to it. And that might be, hand on your heart, that might be the right thing for this part of you. That part may want to run. That
Mm.
part may want to shake. That part may want to rock. That part, whatever, but we let the part tell us what would have been reassuring in that moment.
Yeah.
I wanted somebody to put their arm around me.
Yeah.
Put your arm around you.
Yeah.
You know,
Just, yeah. Or like I
breathe
said,
you.
my hand on
Yeah.
my heart just felt so
Yeah.
comforting. And for me, it's often just hearing the words, it's okay.
Yeah.
Those words,
That's what you needed.
those little words, it's okay. Like no
Yeah.
matter what, it's going to be okay. Worst
Mm-hmm.
case scenario, it's okay.
Yeah.
It's all going to be okay.
And
So,
you're not alone.
and my wounded little scared child is not alone
Mhm.
anymore because
That's
now,
okay.
but I have to be honest, if I'm 100% honest, that it really takes building that muscle, building that adult, because sometimes, like when you're in the limbic system, whether it be around a health issue, it could be a breakup, it could be a financial situation, it could be something just happened to your kid. And when
Yeah.
you're in that fear place and you're locked in your limbic system, and maybe you can speak to this, how can one can bring online the adult? Because a few times, I'm not going to lie, I'm like, where the frig is my adult? You know what I
Yeah,
mean? It
of
was like my little,
course.
where is she? Where is she? I'm scared. I'm scared. And
Yeah.
it's only because I understand this work and have been practicing it
Yeah.
that I'm
Be-
able to build the muscle, but she's not always there online immediately. I have to go, some part of me goes and finds my
mm,
wise adult self and then brings that part of me online and then connects with the wounded part. Is that making sense? Can you connect that somehow for the
It's
listener?
100%. It's the challenge, right?
Mm,
Because when people hear this, they're like, oh, yes, right? And then they go to put it into practice and they're like,
yeah.
I don't have, and this wise self, I call it the sacred self. And she is, that beautiful, resource loving, compassionate, wise version of us, right? And they're like, yeah, well, I don't have that. And
Right.
and that really is the biggest challenge. But you identified something and you said, this is a practice. This is something that I have built.
Yes.
And that's really the key. It isn't, it is absolutely 1000% you have one. So
Yeah.
start with that premise. And actually, since this is such an important part of the work that I teach, I have an entire chapter on how do we access and connect to the sacred self. And there isn't one answer. It's the one answer for you. And so
Mm,
learning and trying things on and figuring out, when do I feel most connected with this? But you build that relationship not in the moments of high stress. You build that relationship when you are calm and when you do have access to your prefrontal cortex as opposed to the limbic system. Because when the limbic system is turned on, essentially the voice of the sacred self is very, very quiet and sometimes almost impossible to access
hmm.
unless you have, really strengthened it. And like you said, I have to go and find her. And so, really, what I'm hearing is I have to turn down the volume on the limbic system so that I can hear her. She never
Mm.
leaves you. She never, ever, ever
Right.
leaves you. She's
Right. So
always
then how
there.
do we calm down the limbic system? You have a
Yeah.
few, like maybe we could do this to make it simple for someone who's listening, who maybe just hearing this type of work for the first time. And
Mhm.
I'm sure there's some that are maybe just learning about it, and then others who are in the middle, and some who have been practicing for a long time. But let's just say for the person who's kind of just coming into the work,
Mhm.
she notices when she is feeling triggered. She may not use the words limbic system or hijacked. Maybe that's even new language, but she knows that she feels maybe stressed, right? She
Mhm.
feels out of control around something and she feels triggered around something. Okay, so she's noticing that. Now, you and I, we know that her limbic system is taking over
Mhm.
and that the nervous system is dysregulated, might even be frozen, depending,
Oh, yeah.
right? And so then you're saying in those moments is not the best time to access the sacred one or the wise self. So you're saying that what is more helpful is when she's not in that state, that heightened state, to practice building the muscle through meditation, or do you have other ways?
Yeah. So I appreciate that you kind of, gave us that big picture of what we're actually trying to accomplish. And it isn't
Yep.
that we can't, that we can't call on the sacred self and go ahead and make the effort, but just to kind of recognize that it's very challenging to when you're in that triggered space, right? Because
Yeah.
your nervous system is highly activated. You've literally switched over. It's almost like a gate, right?
Yeah.
So, and your mind is like, okay, we're going to operate right now from the limbic system because that's going to has the best chance of ensuring our survival in this
Yes.
moment. I'm not thinking about an hour from now. I'm thinking about this 2 minutes right
Yeah.
here.
When I looked
Um,
and saw all the blood from
yeah,
this biopsy, I wasn't
right.
ready to access, like, let me go breathe or meditate. I was like, okay, I got to call, it was like, go, my
Yeah,
inner controller took over. What do I have to do? Boop, 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 boop. I could be bleeding out here. I need to do something, like literally.
yeah, yeah,
I'm
yeah.
laughing now, but no, no lie, no shit.
But I also don't want to judge that part, right? Thank
Yeah.
God for that part. That
Yes.
could have, that part could save our lives. That part is
Yes.
important. It's just to be able to, but it can also distort the truth.
Yes.
And that's the part that we don't want to be in because we don't want to live our life based on,
Yes.
the messages of the limbic system, except in the situations where it truly
Truly
is
can. Yes.
a life-threatening situation. We want to make decisions that are more grounded and can see the big picture, etc. What we're offering today in this conversation is not a quick fix.
No.
And you're not a quick fix kind of person. Here's the 3 steps to
No.
whatever. We're actually talking about, look, this is something that is part of a larger framework, a bigger
Mm.
picture, but it's such an important aspect of it that if you understand what this is and why it's so important, it will change your life, not just one area of your life. When you have that access to that sacred self and she is always right beside you, she is 100% there for you 100% of the time. She knows you, right? She is the best person for this job. So when we have her right here and we can turn to her anytime in any situation, life is very different. So that's what we're talking about developing. And we're saying, okay, well, how do I start, or what do I do when I notice myself in those triggers? Because what we're describing is kind of big, right?
It's huge.
So where the heck do I start, guys? And that's such a great question. So I think the best place to start, honestly, is what I offer in the book and throughout my program is a 5 times a day check-in
Mm.
with yourself. And it may not sound like it's the same thing as what we're talking about, but it's a really important first step. And the reason why is because we start to build safety with ourselves, that somebody is there. Somebody cares about what's going on for us. And I'm getting to know and be able to evaluate where my system is during different points of the day based on different stimuli that's going on. So by starting and offering yourself these little tiny check-ins that you do with yourself. Hey, how are things going for me? Where's my nervous system right now? And I teach a 1 to 10 scale. Where am I on the scale? what input has led to that, and then building from there. Once you get that really solid and you're doing that and you're paying attention, what most people find just by doing that little tiny step is that they don't get triggered as easily because they're noticing along the way. They're like, oh, wow, my nervous system is starting to tip into that 5 range. I'm going to take a moment and do something for myself, and I'm going to bring it down so that I don't get to those higher regions nearly as often. And then I can stay more resourced and have better access. And then once you kind of have that nice base, then you can start to look at the other types of practices and things that can really continue to move it on. But without that first foundation, it can get really frustrating to
Yeah.
be trying to do this like graduate level work when you haven't taken the first course where
101.
you even learn the vocabulary.
Exactly. And that's why I am glad we started there for someone
Yeah.
who may be just picking up this podcast and they're new to it, that where does one begin so that they don't feel frustrated and say, oh, that episode was worthless because it didn't make sense.
Yeah.
If we
Yeah.
were talking at the graduate level, what I want to circle back to what you were saying is, and we were even saying this before we started recording, you're speaking to checking in with yourself. You're
Mm-hmm.
checking in your internal landscape,
Yeah.
as opposed to what we're all so conditioned to do from the time that we're little, rightly so when we're little, but we
Mm-hmm.
continue to do it as adults, is we look outward. We look for others to fix this feeling or fix that or show up for us in this way or show. And when the partner or the spouse isn't meeting my needs, then it's his fault or her fault. And blaming the boss or the coworker or the kids are stressing me out or this or that or whatever it is, or it's my weight or it's this and I can't go to the gym. And all of these things, we're looking externally for these things to make us feel a certain way on the inside. If, that saying, when this happens, then I'll
Yeah.
be happy. When this happens, then when I lose 20
Yeah.
pounds, then I'll feel good about myself. It's
Mm-hmm.
all externally based. And what you and I are doing is we're saying, no, go inward or turn the mirror and go in. How do you create the safety? How do you create the inner landscape that's going to make you feel so yummy,
Mm-hmm.
so
Mm-hmm.
safe, so free, so joyful, so at peace?
Yeah.
And so I don't know if you had, so I wanted to just highlight that. But I think also what you were starting to go toward, and maybe you can speak about your freedom framework, because freedom then is what is accessible when we start to do this work. Because you
Yeah.
said things can change dramatically in
Mm-hmm.
your life when you learn and cultivate this practice of
Yeah.
being able to source your own inner safety. That, for me at least, my inner controller has to take the back seat. And now, my adult is the one driving, and I have so much more freedom in my life and joy and peace. So I don't know if that's exactly what your freedom framework is, but if you want to speak to that, would be amazing.
Yeah, there was like 6 things in there that I would really love to speak to, and this is just such a rich conversation,
So
and
much.
we are hitting on so much depth here. But it's also truly, I think you're in agreement with me. This single thing right here, learning to be this is the entire goal. And when you have
Mm.
that, yes, we have freedom, we have joy, because when we're looking outside of ourselves and we need the external cues that we're safe, they're never going to be enough. Never, ever,
Mhm.
ever, ever, even when they are exactly as we would want them to be. Even when, like, let's say, our partner is just like, you're the best thing ever. I love you so much. And I will never, ever, 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 ever leave you, blah, blah, blah. That registers like, ooh, I like that. But you know what? It's
Mhm.
precarious. And we know it is because it doesn't rest on us, it rests on somebody else. And we know that it isn't. 100% guaranteed. And so we will never feel the sense of safety that we can achieve when it comes from us. And I was sharing I have an ice cream sundae model that I use to help us understand this a little bit better. The life that we're trying to build, that beautiful safety, that freedom, just being ourselves and loving it. That's like this incredible ice cream sundae, right? That's the perfect mix of cool and sweet and crunchy,
Mm.
whatever it is for
I
you.
want one.
Yeah, that's what we're building right now. But the relationship with ourselves is the ice cream. And
Yeah.
then all of the external things, whether it's our success in our work and our relationships and all the things outside of us, are these lovely sprinkles. So we're not saying don't have them, don't shoot for the moon, don't have things, and that they shouldn't matter. Oh
Mm.
yeah, they matter. They make that sundae delicious.
Yeah.
But if we're just throwing in a bunch of sprinkles and only taking it from outside and there is no ice cream, that's gross. No one except my 10-year-old daughter wants to eat a bowl full of sprinkles.
Yeah.
And we feel that like it's not satisfying as lovely as they could be. So that's, if we just think of it, that's the goal, is building this relationship with ourselves. And I know very, very clearly how difficult that can be, because why would I trust myself? I had given myself over to everything outside of me. There was no evidence that I could do it, that I could figure out, that I would be good at the job, that make any sense. So my parts were like, yeah, right. I'm not doing this. Right. It was a really hard battle
Mm.
to make these parts believe that I could do this job. And I would say that because if you sit down with yourself and you're checking in and you're like, oh, what do I need? I'm here for you. And your parts laugh at you, that's okay. That's just a starting point. The parts could be like the little puppy that we bring home from the shelter that hasn't had care. And
Mm.
that puppy is not just going to jump in your arms and be like, oh, I'm so happy to be here with you. Thank you so much. Right? It's going to be crouched
Yeah.
in the corner of the kennel.
Of course.
And so it's going to take us a while, where we're going to bring food and water to the kennel door and just sit there and let our presence slowly, convince that little puppy that we're safe. And that's what we have to do with our parts. So you may sit down and you may do these check-ins for a week solid and get no feedback and feel like they're worthless. And that's where a lot of people give up,
Yeah.
especially if they don't have guidance, especially if they can't make sense of this. And that's why places like the podcast and the book and other places exist, so that we can understand what this looks like and how to do it. But we're not telling people how to do this prescriptively.
No.
It has to come from you. So there is no, here, do this exercise. This will solve everything for you. It's an attunement, right? It's providing the care that you actually needed instead of the care that was available.
And only you can know.
And only you
Only,
can
yeah,
know.
only you can know what you need in the way that you need it.
That's the whole point.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
sometimes we go searching, right? And that's what I did. I was listening to like 5 audiobooks a week on
Yeah.
double speed. Where's the answer? Where's my answer? Because I didn't want to go find it. I just wanted someone else to tell
To
me,
tell you.
yeah, what the magic potion was, how, which makes sense.
Yeah,
Um,
I
yeah,
agree. If someone is listening and they are totally resonating with everything you're saying, they want to know where your books are, they want to know what your courses are, and they just want to connect with you, what is the best way for them to find you?
yeah, they can find everything on the website, lorimontry.com. And I know when I was struggling, I didn't really feel like I was worthy of support. And so
Mm.
I really digested a lot of people's free resources. And so that's been something that's been really important to me to provide. So you will find a lot of resources and links to YouTube videos, and the book. I've made the introduction free so that you can kind of
Mm.
check it out and see, what is this framework all about before you decide if it's something that resonates with you. But if you go there, you'll find it.
And I'll also add to for the listeners that if anyone is listening to this episode and you start to have more questions or
Yeah.
you want to know more, If Lori is willing, I would love to do a part 2. Ask your questions, ask us, and we can continue the conversation, because I feel like there is so much more we can say on it, but we only have like an hour, so we're trying to just condense it. But ask us. If you have questions, leave it in the comments on YouTube. You can comment. You can send me an email. You can comment on the podcast as well, and we'll go from there.
I love that invitation, and I'm 100% in, because I realize you and I are speaking about it from this vantage point of having already
Yes.
been able to. And I thinking about, as we're saying things, I'm thinking about me at every other stage when I was
I
like, huh?
know.
What are you talking about? Well, that doesn't even make sense. So yes,
Exactly.
listen to the podcast, listen to it twice, take your notes, try some things on, then start to ask, here's my block, here's how do I take this forward. This is gold for
It's so
anybody.
gold. Thank you so much for being here today and
Absolutely, my
bringing
pleasure.
your wisdom and such, as you said, gold to
Mm.
the listeners. I love it. As we wrap up today's episode, I just want to say thank you for being here and for taking this time for yourself. If this episode resonated with you, I'd really appreciate it if you would subscribe to the podcast or leave a review. Even a quick star rating helps more people find this space and reminds the algorithms that these conversations matter. And I'd love to hear from you. If you have a question, a takeaway, or something that came up while you were listening, leave a comment or send it in. Let's keep the conversation going. This podcast isn't meant to be a one-way street. It's meant to feel like a community. If you want to learn more about me, my work, or the ways we can go deeper together, you can visit my website. All the details are there. Until next time, take a breath, take the mask off, and be gentle with yourself. I'll see you soon.